There's a moment we all recognize, a moment when the words are just about to come out. They're sharp or sarcastic or maybe just too much. And right before they leave our mouth, there's this tiny space, a pause, a choice. That space, that's power. Controlling your mouth isn't about staying silent, it's about staying aligned. I've said things I wished I could reel back in, like fishing line, words that felt justified in the moment, but left bruises behind. So many of us speak from pain instead of truth, from fear instead of clarity, but our words are not just sounds, they are seeds. And every word we speak plants something in our relationships, in our homes, in our own hearts. Then there's the mind. Oh, the stories it tells. Mine can go from you're doing okay to you're an imposter, everyone's gonna find out in about 30 seconds flat. It's wild how loud the inner critic can be when we're tired, stressed, or just scrolling too much. Controlling the mind doesn't mean silencing it, it means challenging it, naming the lies before they name us. It means taking a breath and asking, is this true? Is this helpful? Is this kind? Now let's talk about money. Money is so much more than numbers, it's a mirror. It reflects how safe we feel, how worthy we believe we are, and what we were taught, spoken or unspoken, about value. Some of us spend to numb. Some of us hoard to feel safe. Some of us avoid looking at our finances like a teenager hiding a bad grade. But when we start to manage our money with presence, not panic, something shifts. It becomes less about having control over it and more about being in right relationship with it. Here's the truth. Controlling your mouth, mind, and money is not about perfection. It's about integrity, about making choices with intention. It's about stewardship. And yes, it's hard sometimes, especially when we're triggered, tired, or feel like everything's spinning too fast. But choosing to pause before speaking, to question our thoughts before believing them, and to plan with our money instead of reacting with it, that's not just control, that's courage. Every time we speak, we're planting something. It might not bloom today or even tomorrow, but it's going into the soil of someone's heart, mind, or spirit, and eventually it will grow. Sometimes we plant encouragement. A simple, you've got this, or I believe in you, can take root in someone who's just barely hanging on. And other times, let's be honest, we plant bitterness. We say something sharp, sarcastic, dismissive, maybe because we were frustrated, maybe because we were hurting. But even those offhand comments can sprout into self-doubt or shame in the person who heard them, and sometimes in ourselves too. I think we underestimate how much power our words really carry, especially with the people closest to us, the words we speak in our homes, in our friendships, in those quiet little daily exchanges. We start to shape not just others' perceptions, but our own environment. Over time, our tone becomes the emotional temperature of the room. If we want warmth, we have to speak warmth. If we want trust, we have to speak with integrity. If we want joy, we have to speak with hope. And let's not forget, we're also planting seeds in ourselves. What we say out loud about ourselves, I'm a mess, I'll never figure this out, I'm just not good with people. Those words don't float into the air and disappear. They sink down, they become roots, and if we're not careful, they shape what we believe we're capable of. But here's the beautiful part. If negative words can plant weeds, then positive words can plant wildflowers. We get to choose what kind of garden we're growing every single day. It starts with awareness, it continues with intention, and it grows through consistency. So speak life even when it's hard. Speak truth even when it's uncomfortable. Speak love especially when it feels undeserved. That's not just kindness, that's legacy. because the harvest you see in your life, in your relationships, and in your own heart, it often started with a single sentence: plant wisely. Would you like me to build this out as part of the speech or make it a standalone piece, like for a blog post or a short talk? You know that moment when something small happens, but your brain takes it and runs a marathon? A friend doesn't text back right away and your mind starts whispering, "They're mad at me." You get passed over for a promotion and suddenly the voice says, "I'm not good enough." Someone laughs across the room and the thought flashes, "They're laughing at me, aren't they?" And just like that, a story begins. The mind is a master storyteller, and when it's left unchecked, when we're tired, overwhelmed, insecure, or just ungrounded, it doesn't write facts. It writes fiction, not because we're dramatic or broken, but because the brain is wired to protect us. It's trying to make sense of uncertainty. It's trying to predict outcomes, fill in gaps, and avoid pain. But here's the thing, protection and truth aren't always the same thing. Many of the stories we tell ourselves aren't rooted in reality. They're rooted in fear, shame, past wounds, and assumptions. And if we don't catch them, if we don't pause and question them, they start to shape how we see everything. Ourselves, other people, opportunities, the future. We start playing defense in situations that don't require it. We get reactive instead of responsive. We shut down emotionally, not because something is truly wrong, but because our brain convinced us we're under attack. Unchecked, the mind will say things like, "You're too much, you're not enough, they don't care, you're gonna mess this up, why even try?" But here's the truth, just because a thought appears doesn't mean it's real. Just because your brain says it doesn't mean your soul has to believe it. That's where awareness comes in. That's where we get our power back. We can pause and say, is this a fact or is this story I'm creating? We can ask what else could be true. We can choose to stay grounded in what's real instead of what's rehearsed. And sometimes the bravest thing we can do is say, that thought is not mine to hold. Because when we check the mind, when we meet it with compassion and curiosity, we stop being dragged around by our fears. We start telling new stories, healthier ones that are rooted in truth, grace, and possibility. Let the mind be creative, yes, but let the heart be the editor. When we think about money, we often think about numbers. We think about bank balances, paychecks and bills. We think about what we have in our accounts and how much is left after the month's expenses. But money is more than just an external object. It's a reflection, a mirror of what's happening inside of us. We've all heard the saying that money is just a tool, and while that's true in a way, it doesn't quite capture the deeper, more complex relationship we have with it. Money is also a story. It carries emotions, beliefs and energy that often stem from our past experiences, our upbringing, and how we see our own worth in the world. Think about it. How many times have you found yourself in a tight spot financially and felt like a failure? Or on the flip side, how many times have you felt a sense of pride when your bank account is looking healthy, as if it somehow proves you're on the right track? Our relationship with money often reflects our inner sense of value, how worthy we feel, how safe we believe we are, and how much control we think we have over our lives. Some of us use money to feel secure. We hoard it, save it, and guard it like a precious treasure, convinced that having more will protect us from the world's uncertainties. But underneath that behavior, there's often a fear that if we don't have enough, we won't be safe, we won't be okay. And that fear, when left unchecked, can lead to constant anxiety about our financial situation, no matter how much we have in the bank. Others might be more carefree, spending money freely as a way to feel valued or important. We buy the things we think will make us happy, believing that the right pair of shoes, the latest gadget, or the dream vacation will fill an emotional void. But even then, the purchases don't deliver the promised satisfaction. Instead, they leave us chasing more, thinking that more will finally fill the gap, only to find that the emptiness remains. Money doesn't lie, it reflects what's happening inside of us. If we don't feel worthy, we may find ourselves avoiding money altogether, avoiding bills, avoiding savings, avoiding conversations about wealth, or we might feel like we have to prove something to the world, spending recklessly to show that we've made it, even if we don't feel we have. But here's the thing, our relationship with money can change when we start looking inward. When we start understanding that how we handle money, how we save, how we spend, how we worry about it, isn't just about the numbers, it's about the narrative we've created around those numbers. It's about what we believe we deserve. It's about how we've been conditioned to think about safety, worth, and freedom. Imagine this. What if instead of viewing money as a way to either escape our fears or prove our worth, we saw it as a means of creating balance in our lives? What if we began to view money as energy? It's neither good nor bad, it's neutral. It's how we use it that matters. When we start to shift our internal story, when we move from fear to trust, from scarcity to abundance, our external reality begins to reflect that. We start making choices that feel more aligned with our values, not just our wants. We create financial habits that reflect not just our need for security, but our ability to believe that we are capable of handling whatever comes our way. We begin to budget, save, and spend from a place of empowerment rather than anxiety. Money can't fix everything, but it can give us the freedom to create the life we want if we're willing to take control of the narrative we've been telling ourselves about it. Think of your financial habits as a mirror into your relationship with yourself. When you start to treat yourself with kindness and self-respect, that energy will translate into how you handle your finances. You'll begin to make choices that reflect self-worth and self-trust rather than fear and scarcity. And in doing so, your financial situation will begin to transform, not because you healed the inner stories that used to control it. Remember, money's not just a measure of what you earn, it's a reflection of who you are and what you believe you deserve. When you shift your inner world, your outer world will follow. Money, like everything else in life, becomes a tool for growth, connection, and opportunity, rather than a source of stress or validation. Silence, reflection, and budgeting are brave acts of self-respect. In a world that constantly pushes us to do more, be more, and have more, the idea of slowing down can feel like an act of rebellion. Yet within that slowing down, within the quiet moments of silence, the time we spend reflecting, and the discipline of budgeting, lies a powerful form of self-respect. It's not always easy, it's not always glamorous, but it's courageous. Let's start with silence. In a society dominated by noise, whether it's the buzz of technology, the constant stream of social media, or the chatter of daily life, silence feels like a luxury. It feels like something we have to earn. But in reality, silence is a choice. And it's often the choice we resist the most because it asks us to face ourselves. When there's no noise, no distractions, we are left with our thoughts. The truth is, it's far easier to drown out the discomfort of self-reflection with the constant hum of life. But in that stillness, something remarkable happens. We begin to hear our own voice. Not the voice of our fears or the noise of the world, but the quiet whisper of our intuition. the one that reminds us of who we are and what we truly need. Taking moments of silence isn't about avoiding life or escaping our responsibilities. It's about tuning into the deeper part of ourselves that's often drowned out. Silence is an act of self-respect because it says, I deserve to listen to myself. In a world that values busyness and productivity, choosing silence is a courageous reminder that your inner peace is not negotiable. Then comes reflection. We are all so busy. We rush through our days, ticking off boxes, meeting deadlines, and trying to keep up with the expectations we set for ourselves or that others set for us. Reflection is the opposite of that hustle. It asks us to stop, to pause, to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Reflection is the practice of being intentional about our actions, thoughts, and choices. It allows us to ask, is this the path I truly want to walk? Am I living in alignment with my values? Are my decisions serving my long-term well-being? Or am I just reacting to the pressure of the moment? Taking time to reflect is an act of bravery because it requires vulnerability. It's so easy to keep moving forward without checking in. It's much easier to stay busy than to pause and face the reality of where we are. But reflection is where growth happens. It's where we learn from our mistakes, celebrate our victories, and adjust our course. When we reflect, we are honoring ourselves enough to ask the hard questions and to listen for the answers. We are giving ourselves permission to grow, evolve, and do better. And then there's budgeting. Budgeting often gets a bad rap. It's seen as restrictive, boring, and a reminder of all the things we can't have. But what if we flipped that perspective? What if budgeting wasn't about scarcity, but about freedom? Budgeting is, at its core, about making intentional choices with your resources. It's about deciding in advance how you want to invest your time, energy, and money so that they align with your values and goals. And in doing so, you create space for what truly matters. In a culture that glorifies instant gratification and living beyond our means, budgeting is an act of radical self-respect. It says, I am worthy of having the life I desire, and I am willing to be responsible in order to create it. Budgeting isn't just about numbers, it's about boundaries, priorities, and respect for what you've worked for. It's about choosing how you spend your money instead of reacting to your impulses, and most importantly, it's about self-discipline, not as a form of punishment, but as an act of self-love. When we budget, we are saying, I care enough about my future to make intentional choices today. We are taking control of our financial destiny rather than letting our circumstances control us. And that takes courage, it takes patience, it takes self-respect. Together, silence, reflection, and budgeting represent a powerful trifecta of self-care. They are the practices that ground us, that allow us to step away from the noise of the world and to reconnect with our deepest desires and values. These practices are not always easy. They don't always feel exciting in the moment, but they are acts of bravery. In choosing silence, we choose peace. In choosing reflection, we choose growth. In choosing budgeting, we choose our future. And perhaps the most courageous thing we can do in a world that's constantly telling us to go faster, buy more, and do more is to simply slow down, tune in, and be intentional. To say, I am worthy of the space and time it takes to honor myself. And when we do that, we don't just survive, we thrive. In a world that often equates control with power, power over others, power over situations, power over circumstances, it's easy to misunderstand what true control really is. We tend to think of control as a strict, rigid force, something that forces us to suppress our desires, our emotions, or our impulses. We view it as a tool to keep things in check, as a way to prevent chaos and to maintain order at all costs. But what if we've been looking at control all wrong? Real control isn't about suppression. It's not about stifling your feelings, denying your desires, or pretending that life is perfect when it's not. Suppression leads to burnout, frustration, and even resentment because it ignores the natural rhythms of who we are and what we need. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. The harder you push it down, the more it wants to rise to the surface. Suppression only works temporarily, and in the long run, it creates more tension than peace. True control, however, is about conscious stewardship. It's about understanding and managing the energy that you have, not through force, but through wisdom. Stewardship is about taking responsibility for the resources you've been given, whether that's your time, your money, your emotions, or your choices. It's about being the caretaker of what you have and making intentional, mindful decisions about how you use those resources. When we shift from seeing control as suppression to seeing it as stewardship, everything changes. It's no longer about pushing things down or pretending we're fine when we're not. It's about being with ourselves, being aware of what's happening within us, and choosing how we respond. This kind of control isn't about denying your emotions. It's about managing them. It's not about avoiding discomfort. It's about navigating through it with intention. Stewardship requires awareness, patience, and kindness. It asks us to be honest about what we need and to make choices that honor those needs rather than simply reacting in the moment. Take your emotions, for example. Emotions are powerful. They can either be an overwhelming force that runs the show, or they can be something we manage with respect and care. If we suppress our feelings, whether it's anger, sadness, or even joy, we're not in control. We're letting our emotions control us. But when we choose conscious stewardship of our emotions, we acknowledge them, allow them to move through us, and decide how to express them in a healthy way. We don't let them dictate our actions, but we don't deny them either. We simply make a choice to respond, not react. This same principle applies to our finances, our time, and even our relationships. Conscious stewardship means taking the time to assess what matters most to us and making intentional choices based on that. It's not about hoarding or spending recklessly. It's about being thoughtful with our resources. It's about creating a life that aligns with our values rather than being swept away by external pressures or temporary desires. When we approach control as stewardship, we stop seeing ourselves as victims of our circumstances. We start seeing ourselves as the caretakers of our lives. We start making decisions based on our long-term vision and goals instead of on immediate impulses. We shift from a reactive mindset to a proactive. Consider your time. How often do we let our schedules be dictated by others or by the endless to-do list that never seems to end? But conscious stewardship of time means we take ownership of our days. We plan with purpose. We create space for what matters, whether it's rest, connection, creativity, or work. It doesn't mean we're perfect at managing every minute, but it means we've made the decision to be intentional with how we spend our time. The same goes for money. When we see control as suppression, we may feel restricted by budgets or savings goals. But when we approach our finances with stewardship, we begin to see money as a tool, something to be used thoughtfully and in alignment with our values. We make decisions based on what's truly important to us, not on fleeting desires or societal pressures. We become conscious of where our money is going and make choices that reflect our deepest priorities. In relationships, control isn't about manipulation or coercion. It's about creating healthy boundaries and maintaining mutual respect. Stewardship in relationships means we care for them, nurture them, and protect the energy we invest in them. We don't let resentment build up because we've suppressed our needs. Instead, we communicate openly and honestly, creating space for understanding and connection. And here's the ultimate truth: conscious stewardship leads to freedom. It may sound counterintuitive, but when we take responsibility for our choices, when we manage our emotions, our time, our money, and our relationships with care, we unlock a deeper sense of freedom. Freedom to live authentically, freedom to make decisions that honor our values, freedom from the chaos of constant reactivity. So, control isn't about tight grip, restriction, or suppression. It's not about forcing things into submission. It's about being present, being aware, and being responsible for the energy you put into the world. It's about honoring yourself and your needs and choosing to live in a way that reflects your highest self. When we begin to approach control as stewardship, we stop fighting against the flow of life. Instead, we start to move with it wisely, intentionally, and with a sense of deep respect for ourselves and the world around us. True control is freedom in disguise. It's not about saying no to everything. It's about saying yes to the things that truly matter and letting go of the things that don't. It's about being the steward of your life rather than being at the mercy of your circumstances. As we reflect on these concepts, control, money, silence, reflection, and conscious stewardship, it becomes clear that the path to living with purpose and intention is not about exerting force or suppressing who we are. It's about choosing to respond thoughtfully and mindfully to the world around us. It's about embracing our own power through conscious decisions, not through reactive impulses. True control is not about tightening our grip on life, but about understanding the flow of it and learning how to guide it with wisdom. Money mirrors our inner world, showing us where we might need to heal or grow, but also offering us the opportunity to choose how we wish to engage with it, whether with fear or with abundance. Silence and reflection, too, are powerful practices that give us the space to recalibrate and realign with our truest selves. They allow us to hear the voice within, to pause before we act, and to move forward with clarity and intention. Budgeting is not a limitation, but a powerful tool for freedom, a way to ensure that we are using our resources in a way that supports our deepest values and our long-term vision. Each of these acts, silence, reflection, budgeting, and conscious control, are acts of deep self-respect. They are courageous choices to honor who we are and who we're becoming. They allow us to reclaim our agency in a world that often seeks to distract or push us off course. When we take responsibility for our emotions, our time, and our choices, we step into a life of true empowerment. We realize that the key to control is not about external force, but about internal alignment. The truth is, we don't need to suppress any part of ourselves to live with purpose. We simply need to become conscious stewards of our resources, our energy, our time, our words, and our money. When we do this, we are not only honoring ourselves, but also creating a life that is intentional, fulfilling, and aligned with the very essence of who we are. Let us walk forward with this understanding. The life we lead is not one of suppression or reaction. It is one of conscious choice, brave reflection, and empowered stewardship. The way we choose to manage ourselves and our resources determines the quality of the life we create. So let's choose wisely with intention and with respect for ourselves and for the world we are shaping.